For this next curve, we're going to make a voltage versus depth or an amplitude versus depth curve, typical for sizing volumetric wear using the bobbin coil. Now there are different ways to size wear, but the one we're going to demonstrate today is just using an absolute mix with an amplitude curve to size those flaws, the depth that is. What you're looking at in the center of your screen is the operating point for Inconel 600. This happens to be 50 mil wall thickness. But as I scroll up into the first flaw, that's actually a 20% deep single-sided wear scar. If I go up a little bit further, and I'm looking at a mixed channel. This is a 400-100 absolute mix. If you look over in the strip chart on the left is mix 1 with the TSP mixed out, and mix 2 is what we got in the Lysigou here. That's also got the TSP signal mixed out very, very nicely. So as we're scrolling up, there's a 20, there's a 40, and there's a 60. They're only going one direction because these are absolute channels used for constructing this mix. So because it's depth based on voltage, you first have to set a reference voltage for one of these signals. Typically what they do, they'll take like the 40% wear and they'll set it to 5 volts. But they use vert max to measure the voltage. So if I do a vert max on that, it's 4.89 volts. We want to set that to 5 volts. And the way you do that, you just go in the same region of your screen where you're setting rotation and phase, but you click on the V. Now, every software is a little bit different, so you might not have this configuration, but see how I just set it to 5 volts? Okay. So now we've got a 20, 40, and a 60. We're going to set this curve with the 20 and the 40 because most of the flaws we're expecting to see are within that range. If we're expecting flaws greater than 40%, or if we see something that comes in at 39%, we might want to create a calibration curve using the 20, 40, and 60% wear scars because it'll be more accurate for those deeper flaws. So what we're going to do now is we're going to get down to null, which is right there. That's going to be 0% deep. So let's go into our analysis curves. Now, I can make a phase versus depth, but we're going to use, oh, there's an angle high res. I'm not sure what that is. But we're going to make a volts curve, and that really doesn't look that great. So we're going to redraw it. But before we do, we're going to note the volts. So minus 0.06 volts for that. Okay. But we know it's 0%. So we're going to go into analysis curves. We've got the volts curve selected. We're going to highlight this and take it down to 0 volts. And we're going to call that 0% because we're in the null condition tubing or flaw-free area of the tubing. Then we'll just, did we set volts already? I forget. 20, 40, 60. Did we set the volts? Measure, vert max. Yeah, we set the volts already. Got a short-term memory today. Haven't had enough coffee. Okay, so we already set the 0 point, and now we're going to set the 20, which is right there, 2.37 volts. Analysis curves. Here we had 2.37 volts. We'll call that 2.4. And we're saying that's the 20% flaw. All right, and now we're going to go back and we're going to look at the 40, which is that guy right there. We'll hit vert max 5 volts because that's where we set it, right? But it's saying 38. So we'll go down to this point and we're going to bring that to 5 volts. That curve doesn't know what to do with these numbers. Now we're going to bring that to 40 and it's going to redraw the curve. So that's going to be our amplitude curve for sizing where, with our 20% set, 40% set to 5 volts, okay? So now, when I go back and actually measure the 20, it gives us 19, close enough. And when I go to the 40 and measure it, 40%. Now what happens when I calibrate it on the 20 and the 40, and then I go to the 60? I measure the vertical amplitude on that one. 65%. Yeah, I mean, it's pretty close based on our curve. But what I'm going to do now is go reset the curve using, instead of the 0 point, I'm going to use 20%, 40%, and 60%. And then we'll see how that changes the curve a little bit. So we'll keep the voltage set the way it was, 5 volts on the 40%er. But all we're going to do is reset the volts versus depth points. So for this one's the 20 at 2.09 volts. That's going to be our first point here. 20 at 2.09 volts, I think it said. We're setting that one to 20. It was a 2.1 volts, is what we said. Yeah, 2.1 volts. Now we're going to go to the 40, which is right there, hit vert max. That one's right at 5 volts for the 40. So we're going to crank this up to 5 volts. We're going to change that to 40. Again, our curve doesn't know what to. We're given all these crazy numbers. Then we're going to go up to the 60 and do vert max on that guy. 8.65 volts. See, it says 0. That's because we don't have our curve completed yet. 8.65 volts. 8.65 volts. 8.7 would be close enough. And when we dial this into 60, you're going to see magical things happen to that curve. It starts to redraw based on our actual numbers. And now you have the curve built using the 20, 40, and 60%. So that'll be a little bit more accurate for the deeper flaws. And let's just go check out the performance of our calibration curve. Vert max got 22%. For the 40%, we hit vert max, we got 40, 5 volts because we'll reset it. And then finally, we'll go to the largest where it goes 60. And we'll measure that vert max, and we got 59%. So it's probably a little bit more accurate for the deepest one. So there you go. You've witnessed the construction of a phase versus depth curve for measuring the depth of short flaws based on their phase angle. And then this last one here was performing a amplitude sizing activity, using a 2-channel absolute mix, using an amplitude or a voltage curve to estimate depth. I hope you enjoyed the video. If you have any questions, feel free to leave them in the comment. Also, please like and subscribe to this channel if you find value in these videos. Have a nice day.